Didn't check in, I don't know.
I didn't know.
I went so early, and then I was like, oh, yeah, it's raining.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, they went to.
Minor
Forgot about that.
vacation. Protesting tariffs and
There you go. I'm just gonna go check out all the results.
push back.
Tune in to the town hall last night? I did, I tried to ask. Because if I gave my name, it's like, no.
Okay, here we go. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the BCAG Board of Directors meeting of March 27th, 2025. Please join me in saluting the flag of our nation. Ready? Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, please call the roll.
Board Member Connolly,
Here.
Board Member Durfee, Board Member Ritter, here. Board Member Kimmelshoe, Board Member Teeter,
Here.
Board Member Arnold,
Here.
Board Member Goldstein, here. Board Member Calderon,
Here.
Board Member Pittman,
Here.
Board Member John, Board Member Crowder.
Here. Okay, to the clerk, do we have any electronic comments on the agenda today?
None.
Thank you very much. Next up is the consent agenda. Would anyone on the class like to pull something on the consent? Anyone from the public? Comment on that?
Second.
Good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Items for action, number 6, acceptance of BCAG fiscal audit, transportation development act audits for 2024. Hi, Julie.
Hi, good morning, Board. Here we are again for my annual presentation. Today I'm presenting the audit of the BCAG financial statements for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024. The audited financial statements are submitted to the Federal Clearinghouse, the State Controller's Office, Caltrans, and other funding programs. These ensures that the allocated TDA funds are audited. Thus, we're presenting the audits of the jurisdictions, your TDA funds for the county and the cities. I'm going to review the highlights of the BCAG financial statements, and our independent auditor, Ingrid Scheiplein, will address the audits. She's going to be joining us via Zoom today, so hopefully she's not on yet. Okay, hopefully she gets on soon. You've all been provided with a hard copy of the financial statement, so you can follow along easily if you like. At the beginning of the financial statements, we have a management's discussion and analysis. It's about 10 pages of narrative with a few highlights of basically, you could read that and you'd have a good idea of what's going on, what went on for the fiscal year. So starting on page 4, there's some financial highlights. It also goes over the different kinds of financial statements that a government agency is required to prepare. This is pretty much true for all government agencies. We do government-wide financial statements that is a full accrual. It shows all the assets, all the liabilities. So that's where you see the pension liabilities and all of our buses and equipment. We also have fund financial statements, and fund financial statements are more like what you see when you're doing budgeting. You know, we talk about the LTF funds and the STA, and you allocate those out. We have a planning and administration fund, and that is where you approve the OWP budget. There's also a transit fund, and that budget is also approved by this board. So if you turn to page 7, you'll see the government-wide financial analysis in a comparative format. and you can scroll down just a little bit, Ashley, thanks. You'll notice here that we have about $55 million of assets and deferred outflows. We have about 14 million in liabilities and about 41 in net assets. And they're pretty consistent over the last 2 years. You can see that in the total there. If you turn to page 8, you'll see the statement of activities, which is essentially an income statement. And there you'll see it's pretty consistent year over year, about 32 million in expenses, about 37 in revenues, and about, again, 40 million in net ending balance. In the current year, 2024, we did decrease our net assets, and that was largely due to the depreciation that we take on our fixed assets in the transit system every year. There were no other offsetting increases. So in 2023, we had a large increase due to closing the BRTC round 1. But this year, mainly depreciation is being the main effect. On page 11, you'll see the colorful transit funding source. I like to point this out, especially for the new board members, that when you think about the transit budget and how it's funded, passenger fares is only 10.9% of the total budget. The remainder of the transit funds are funded with federal and state allocations, so it's a heavily subsidized system. That being said, we did increase the passenger fares percentage of the pie, went up from 10.2 last year to 10.9. So we are increasing the fares are increasing. They kind of dipped during COVID for some of you new folks. Okay, if you turn to page 17, you'll see now the balance sheet for the governmental funds. And this is, again, the way that you're used to seeing things kind of broken out by fund. So you'll see that we had in total about 13 million of assets, 2 million of liabilities. So we've got about 13 million or 11 million fund balance for the governmental funds. That is primarily made up of restricted funds, funds that are waiting to be distributed to transit agencies and the cities. So that we've got about almost 11 million in that. For the planning and administration fund, we have a fund balance of 540,000, which is about 3 months worth of operating and that's a sweet spot to be in. You know, a few years back, we were a little low there. We increased the allocation of TDA, and now we're sitting in the spot where you know, GFOA says we're comfortable. Okay, page 17, page 18 is the governmental funds income statement, if you will. You'll notice that we have about 20 million in revenues, most of which we've got about 17 million of those revenues that we receive that we distribute to transit and to the cities and the county. So a lot of that's, if you look down at the net change in fund balance, have you got that on there? Yeah. You'll see that on that line item, one of the things I want to point out is there's a huge drop in the local transportation fund. That's that middle one that you see there, a net decrease of 1.4 million. In the consent items for the preliminary TDA, you'll notice that we've dropped the revenues and the allocations this year. That's because we're seeing a decline in the TDA funds. which are made up of two different kinds. The local transportation funds are made up of 1/4% of the sales tax, or 1 penny, half a penny, no, 1/4 of a penny of the sales tax. And sales taxes are declining. So the revenues are the trend line is heading down. You know, that could change pretty quickly, but the next one over, the STA, you can see at the top too that there's 10 million in revenues, the LTF, and the 2.5, that's for the state transit assistance. That revenue source decreased 10% in the for the fiscal year ending 2024. So both of those are trending down at the moment. So you're going to see allocations trending down, and you're probably going to hear from your public works directors that things are trending down. So that was a noteworthy thing in this particular statement. So next, I want to turn to page 21, where we can see the statement for the operating statement for the transit system. And you'll see that we have revenues, fare revenues of 1.2, 1.3 million. That is up 12% over the prior year. So we are increasing, and later we'll talk about, you know, where we need to be with that, but we are coming back, and we did institute a fare increase in January, so hopefully that is coming back even more. The transit budget operating expenditures are up about 4.6 over the year, which is pretty standard. We have an operating agreement with TransDev, and that increases every year, 3%, 4%, 5%. It's a 10-year contract, and so it's pretty much written in stone there. Yeah.
You said it's up 4.6. Is that reflected on this revenues expense page, or
No,
you just know?
I just know it.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah. You don't see that number, but you know, I compare every year to say, you know, where were we last year? Where are we this year? So that I can give the number. Okay. So then I'll have you turn to page 46. It's the last note in the notes of the financial statement, and this is regarding transit as well. Scroll up just a little bit so we can see. Down. I want to see all the numbers and a little bit of the language as well. So thank you. We changed to a blended fare box ratio. Fare box used to be much more of an issue that we had to manage. We had to make sure that we made our ratios or we would lose our TDA funding. When COVID hit, they passed an AB 149, and they've now allowed us to include our federal and state revenues in with our local revenues to come up with our ratio. And you can see pre-ratio, we weren't making our fare box ratios. We had, for the blended, we needed to have 15.6. And for paratransit, you need to have 10. So one of them's making it, one of them's not. But with the change in the regulation, the fare box ratios are kind of irrelevant at this point because we get so much subsidy that we're going to make it. Now, I point this out because things change, and that regulation can change pretty abruptly. So right now, the TDA program, which was instituted in 1976, they're going through some process of reevaluating how they want to monitor it. And so things may change. They may change drastically. They may change subtly. But I wanted to provide both, like, kind of where we are.
On a federal or state side?
That's a state, yeah.
State side.
Transportation Development Act is a state of California funding. So that's usually where I leave it. And then I'll have Ingrid, it looks like she might be here at this point. And Ingrid is in Sacramento, and she couldn't make it today. She's normally here, but she'll talk about what she discovered in the audit. Does both the BCAG audit and again, the TDA audits, which, are one fund for all of the cities in the county where we're distributing the TDA. So we are required to have that audited, and she'll present that for you. Here. Here.
There.
She's something for her microphone.
Technology.
Mm-hmm. Looks like it's she's calling in. Let me see. Oh, you need to call this number?
Should have went to that.
Is it?
Yeah, it's going.
I don't know if I have her direct phone number. But she,
IT.
yeah.
Can I ask a question? while-
Sure, absolutely.
So, the letter,
Yeah.
we're not filing things on time. It says in the letter that we recommend the association work with the county association. of
Yes,
governments.
yes.
So, I'm just wondering where the responsibility lies with, because it's our audit of us, but if we have a partner that's not submitting the information that we need in
Yeah.
order to be compliant and not.
This is a good time for me to bring this up. So in the consent item as well, you approved Gridley's 2024 TDA funds. We withheld them because the audits were not complete. And part of the regulation is, you know, if you're not doing your audits, we're not handing out money. We have been working very closely. I've been working with Gridley for many years now. You know, there's been a lot of turnover at the city, and I think Elisa came in and she has done a pretty good job of getting things back on track, but she had so much past stuff to get through that it was a little onerous. And now she's brought on Martin Pineda, I think is his name, and he's doing a fabulous job. They completed the 2023 audit. They are in the process of 2024 audit right now. So they are catching up, and so
But we approved,
I'm feeling positive
we
about it.
approved in the consent agenda the next year's funding.
No, you approved last year's.
24.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
because it says in the letter that the 23-24 will be completed in this April.
right.
So
But-
we're kind of doing it
Yeah.
a little bit.
Well, right now, there's two things that happened. One of the things is you approved the 25-26 for everyone.
Right.
And when they completed the 23-24, now they can, 22-23, now they can apply for the 23-24. Yeah. So their audit is complete, or they're in the process of completing it. So now we kind of need the claim form, the auditor's claim form, in order to complete the audit. So that's why we brought it to you this time. We also brought Biggs, and part of the reason Biggs had done their audit, that wasn't the issue there, but they did not have all of the information to prepare the claim, and so we said, well, Gridley's not doing it, so you can just bring it with Gridley. And so when they completed their audit, we went ahead and were providing the claims, or you're approving the claims for that 23-24 funding year. They do get approved in advance, basically. Yeah.
In respect to the Gridley situation, the former administrator, Walker, And now, Mr. Arteaga actually inherited a mess.
Yes, absolutely.
And, because at one point there was a 50%, CFO working on 50%.
Yeah,
So there was a lot of neglect in that area,
yeah,
as far as I understand. And, at this point, Ms. Arteaga is actually trying to catch up
yes.
and, doing her best.
She's
And
doing a great job, I
I'm
think.
really thankful for that.
Yeah, I think you have a strong team at the moment, so hopefully they stay.
That the apportionment bigs inwardly, not that significant. It's not uncommon for them not to identify projects to be paying for if they're trying to build them up and do something. So on our side, there are no red flags. We are trying to catch bigs and Gridley up.
Yeah. Any luck with Ingrid? Okay. Well, I will stand in for her for the moment then. And, back to the audit book here. You can see the auditor's report, which is on page 1, and it is an unmodified or clean opinion. The only, there is a qualification, I think she calls it, because there's generally accepted accounting principles, there's, you know, and sometimes they come out and they don't make sense for a small agency like us. So, one of the ones that we chose not to follow had to do with, leases, and it has to do with the lease that we carry with the nonprofit. And, you know, they want us to go through you know, the nonprofit is like 40 years or something, but we're only ever gonna be in that lease for 7 years during the compliance period. It's just part of the way the new market tax credits are set up. So it doesn't make really any sense to look at it over a 40-year period when we never intend to be in that lease for 40 years. We've closed round 1 of the new market credits already, and that's why we had the big bump up in net assets last year. But we do have round 2 closing in 1 year from now, March of 2027. And so all of those leases will go away. All of those assets will come back to the BCAG audit. And so to try to complicate it with a lot of, you know, future present value of this and that doesn't really make the picture any clearer. So, she gives a clean audit, except for, the GASB 87 leases, which is at the bottom of page 1.
In that she references something like section J or something, like, how are we supposed to know what she's referencing? Note J, like, is that exists somewhere else in the audit?
Note J?
Yeah.
Yes, it is the note to the financial statement. So
That sounds.
it's on page 34. Yeah, so, you know, there's statements and then there's notes to the financial statement. So if she refers to a note, it's going to be a note in our financial statements, which we prepare, she audits.
Thought it was a gap.
Oh, no.
So I was like.
I can't even keep track of all of those. She does have, she usually points out as well at the very end are some more of their reports. There's on page 58, well, 56 is the first one. It's the independent auditors report on internal control. And they found nothing to bring forward on that. And then there's the report on compliance for each of the major programs. Because we receive more than $3 million in federal funding, we have to do a single audit, which is a federal, higher standards, deeper review of the federal funding. And each year, they select different programs, and you can see on page 60, a summary of the results, of all of those, really, that there's no material weakness, no issues reported. They identify the programs that we have been audited. There are no findings, you can see on page B, and on 61, findings and costs, none. Prior year findings, none. So those are generally the reports that she reviews.
So we have.
Yeah. As usual, I might add. Yeah, even if we can't get her. Yeah.
I have no.
I don't know if you can hear Ingrid, but we're gonna move on.
Do any of you have any problems with the audit?
Yeah, if anybody felt the need to,
First, is there any public comment on this? Go to public comment.
Move we accept the audit.
Second. Motion second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Honestly, good job, Julie. You make the boring things exciting. And I
That's
didn't
why
ask
I wore bright pink.
you know, we could have asked the questions about the voodoo magic with the bank and why it goes away in 7 years, but I let it go.
yeah, it's magic right there.
It is, really.
Oh, my God.
Okay, number 7, approval of resolution number 2024-25-8.
Before we move on to that, you're now on the line, if you have any questions for her.
I would like to tell you, Ingrid, great job, thank you. Unless you really want to talk. Good job.
Hold on.
See
With
you
no
next
doubt.
year. Okay, number 7, approval of resolution 2024-25-08, 2025-26, unmet transit needs assessment findings, Victoria.
Good morning, board. I am bringing you the unmet transit needs assessment. It is an assessment that we do every year in order to determine if there are unmet transit needs that are reasonable to meet as determined by the TDA and, this board, 20 years ago. And this is specific to the fixed route. It's specific to, are there areas or frequency levels service that need to change that are reasonable to meet? Are there other areas that we could be or should be giving service to that we currently do not? And after receiving comments from the public throughout the year, but also targeted outreach between the October board meeting and the December board meeting, we were able to determine that there are currently no unmet transit needs that are reasonable to meet. Mainly that is due to funding. The routes would not dramatically increase the ridership, or they would not maintain the ridership they would need to in order to meet an acceptable level of fare box recovery, that 15.6%. And also many of the comments we received were more operations related, requests to improve our bus stops, requests for different or paratransit, requests for more frequent times on a few key routes, and those are not considered, largely those are not considered unmet needs under the TDA. We do realize that there are a lot of changes to bring the B line into 21st century, and staff is working on those outside of this process. But according to these definitions that were laid out for unmet needs for the TDA, we currently have no unmet needs that are reasonable. And we ask that you approve that finding. This finding has to be met before we can expend money for other TDA projects on streets and roads.
Any questions or comments, or public comment? Okay. Entertain a motion.
Move approval.
I'll second.
But I had you guys trained better than
Which
that.
one of us? I'm gonna try, man.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. So, approval of resolution number 2024-25-09, approval of Butte County Association of Governments Regional Transit Title VI Program.
Morning, Board. So I'm bringing for you today the updated plan and resolution for the Title VI program that we have. It's a requirement from FTAs as we are an agency that receives funds. Requirement is to have the plan in place and update it every 3 years. The updates generally are because of the demographics change, and they want that kind of data updated as well. And of course, if we have any other updates to the plan itself. Title VI deals with race, color, and national origin issues. So if anything is brought up for their like complaints or anything, we cover that covers. And for this update, this program update, there was no updates to the base plan, just updates to things like staff, demographic calculations, and some minor route information, and the maps. I updated a couple maps in there. So there was no significant changes to data during the 4-factor analysis, and working with the language, limited English population, demographics. Nothing significant as far as data there. We had no complaints over the last 3 years since January 2022, no valid complaints. And really that's about it. Just every 3 years. I do the annual review, and that's a different process. Just update the board that. And with that, if there's any questions or...
Questions or comments by board members? Any public comment? Those public comment, wishes of the board. That's when one of you makes a motion.
Move approval. Second approval.
There you go.
I was
Good
trying
job.
to be quiet
Here.
for once.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Did you notice on my right, right? Joe.
Right to the left.
Thank you, board.
Items for information, number 9, 2026 Regional Transportation Improvement Program Development. Yvonne.
Good morning, Board. This is an information item regarding the upcoming development of the 2026 Regional Transportation Improvement Program. BCAG, as the state-designated regional transportation planning agency, is required to prepare, adopt by December 15th, the document. This is really BCAG's chapter of the State Transportation Improvement Program adopted by the California Transportation. The commission initiated this process at their January commission meetings. So in doing so, staff prepared the schedule in preparing BCAG's RTIP. Really of significance is they are currently preparing a fund estimate. How much funds do we have to work with to program projects? That will not be released until late May, early June. So really, until then, we don't know, but right now, all indications are not going to be that great. First thing that staff will do is evaluate the current projects programmed. Those are that are programmed in the current State Transportation Improvement Program. Those specific projects for Chico and one for the county are identified in the second page of your memo. But really, it's just an information item presenting the schedule to inform each of your public works directors and the board the upcoming process. No news, but it's coming.
It's not much, is what you're saying.
I'd be shocked if it's over 4 million.
Questions or comments by board members? Public comment on this, man? Those public comment, move on. BCAG draft 25-26 overall work program budget.
Morning, Board. So every year we bring a draft OWP and budget to the board at this time. our final back in April. For this year, there really isn't a tremendous amount of change. Our overall budget is like it's gonna go up a little bit, about 5%, which takes it back to where it was 23-24. We have 21 work elements that we're gonna be working on this year, and the difference this time around is that, the way we organize the overall work program is into what we call 100, 200, and 300 level divisions. And the 200 level division is something we created several years ago to pursue capital improvement type projects. Anything that we do on behalf of Caltrans for mitigation, anything we do on behalf of the local jurisdictions for development of, say, highway projects or capital projects that we do for the transit side of the house. The two projects that we had in the Paradise Transit Center, State Route 191, this year, so they're going to be dropping out of the ODP. And the other third element was we were carrying two SB1 Sustainable Community Strategies elements while we were developing the art. Adopted in December last year, so we now will only be carrying one of those elements through here. Some notable changes, not necessarily big changes, but I have written the OWP to work elements, particularly the 300 level ones, which are the ones that represent our support to the transit side of the house. Leaning a little bit into those work elements to provide support to transit to forward with a lot of these changes that I've brought before in the last couple of months. That's really just an effort to identify a little bit more resources transit side to help push these things forward and have the available resources in-house to all these changes. That was part of the item that I brought forth last month talking about. So aside from that, a couple other things that I did want to bring up. I'll just say potential issues that are not going to affect us this OWP, but we may see next year, is in the reauthorization of the transportation bill, which is supposed to come out in July 1 of 26. There is some talk, it's kind of quiet right now, but I'm really trying to keep my eye on this. The funding that we use, federal transportation planning funds, are legislated in the transportation. And there's been a little bit of, concern that that might be something that's targeted in the reauthorization process, as many programs will be. I say targeted in the sense that if in drafting the new transportation bill, there's a need to trim it down or reallocate funds to other priorities, there is a possibility that the funding that we get from the legislation be cut or dramatically reduced, but no promises on that. I'm just throwing it out there that I would bring that forth next year. Next year's okay. Worry about it this year. It does constitute about 17% of our revenue, and it largely supports all the staffing we hire. So if it does get looked or reduced or reallocated, we'll be bringing that up sooner versus later, because that would mean restructuring of how we do business. But there's nothing to worry about this year, so class is half full. The other thing that is happening out there is the SB 375, is the original gas reduction. All of the legislation and funding has been born out of that. Talked a little bit about how the MPOs in the state are trying to work with CARB and the governor's office on how that legislation all the legislation and policies that are being developed out of it, how that maybe needs to be, rewritten or revised so that MPOs can actually hit the targets that are being posed to us for EMTs. All the 18 MPOs have been engaged with CARB and the governor's office. There's been, say, very little movement on the part of CARB to want to compromise too much on targets being set for all of us, the MPOs statewide. They've in fact alluded to the idea that they may want to raise production targets.
Andy, before you move off of that,
Yeah.
so I feel like we get different information, from BCAG than we get from air quality. So our air quality designation in here is, non-attainment or marginal non-attainment. But what we hear when we get our air quality report and how it shows up in our annual report is that we are attainment with exceptional events. And so I don't understand why we have different ways of qualifying our attainment status.
That's a really good question, and there's essentially two, and Brian, you could probably add a little bit to that particular status. Two different things going on there, I think. There's the attainment criteria that we meet with, I'll let Brian do that, and then there's.
As an MPO, we're required to meet federal air quality requirements, sometimes a little. So we have no problem ever meeting air quality. Basically budgets. We never have, we're well under the, SB 370 different, which is at this time not a federal air quality. So ARB kind of sets the rules for how we deal with that through SB 375 and the accounting of it. So that's where the main difference lies. Very different calculations. We actually have to use two different emissions models for each.
So this is talking about greenhouse gases, not the PM 2.5.
Exactly. Right. So we do have that element, an air quality element. That's where PM 2.5, that's where ozone's at. And I think we're maintenance now for PM 2.5 and somewhere around non-attainment.
Yeah.
Getting towards
So why are we talking to CARB about the greenhouse gases? Are we just asking them to be lobbying on our behalf?
So SB 375 is a state requirement, not federal. So CARB handles the state requirement portion of that, the GHG. They were appointed under the legislation. I hope that answers it.
It does. It seems very inefficient.
Yeah, the federal government has several times, where we do performance measures, like we did the safety one last month. They've tried to include a GHG one. Comes up, then it pulls back. So currently, there is no GHG.
Now, just to follow up on that a little bit, you're right, it's seemingly two of the same things that we're talking about that have very different standards or criteria, one federal, one akin to the unmet transit needs. We go through this unmet transit needs every year, and we say we don't have any needs that are reasonable to meet, but the definition of a need. A need, by definition of the regulations we're under, is very different than the need that we all think is the best thing for the region. So it's a similar kind of thing. And additionally, one seemingly very difficult discussion that could be had is that CARB has indicated that they may want to start reviewing federal targets. So now there's a little bit of this reach for state regulatory agencies who want to federal. That's going to be add more. So Anyway, the only reason I bring that up is, I'll be bringing that forward to the board as those discussions along and how they impact. Outside of that, no changes. We'll bring back a finalized budget in April, which really won't be much different than this at all. It really will be a matter of finalizing some of the numbers that we wait for to materialize between. So I can take any questions.
Just very clear as mud. Basically, you're saying the feds aren't touching us.
I don't think so. And even still, last time I talked about any of the federal agreements that all the local jurisdictions have, anything that's in place is, as far as we know, is fine. So no federal agreements are gonna be removed. Any projects that have been put in for competitive consideration, different story. So you already got your agreements and projects up and running.
Andy, anything that didn't appear in the budgeted revenues under the 25-26 year, did we get allocations for more than 1 year at a time, or?
Well, what we generally get is, like for federal aid funding,
Yeah, like we have the FTA 5307 planning and, the shop, where we have in the 24-25 budget, there's dollars, but in the 20.
right? Those are happen like if we have agreements, like for instance, the shop money was, part of the 191 mitigation. So that would be a Caltrans agreement that we have. So that's what, periodically, we get into these situations where we have an agreement with Caltrans or a local jurisdiction. The funds that we utilize to manage that project on their behalf. So just as an example, in this year's budget, I talked about this TERS funding, which is a state dollar amount. We received those funding in July of '24, but we're not gonna be actively spending those funds.
Some things are grant funded, some things are apportionments.
I was just noticing. Because
Start spending in
Any other questions? Any public comment on this matter? Close public comment. This time we'll take public comment. Anyone can speak on any matter, take action. Any public comment? That,
Board comments?
yeah, we'll have board comments if you want.
Well, first off, I want to thank the Beeline for being at the Arbor Day celebration. The booth was very nice, and so thank you for that. An idea floating at Orville City right now, we realize that there's a benchmark to how much road repair work we can do from an entity. So there's an effort now going on to actually create a charter amendment where we have more control over how much work we do on the roads. It's going to be kind of interesting. I've heard of that before, but just be aware that that's what Orville's cooking on right now. I think it's 200,000 or some benchmark that if we work on a project, we have to put it out to competitive bid. And the council wants to be able to do more work on roads, as we all have road problems, but a recent analysis showed us we really have to work hard on our roads. Be interesting to see where that goes. Kind of an interesting draw.
I do think, and this is really just speculation, that there probably will be an increased investment available with authorization. Basic it.
Well, it'd be good to hear. I know that's, we were asked to it, and then they come back and said, well, there's certain benchmarks that you can't exceed before you have to put out the competitive bids. That was the discussion. It's just kind of interesting.
There's particular deficiencies in the country with a lot of large field structure, large population centers, large bodies of water. Those are, Maryland Bridge was just kind of a.
The other thing I wanted to mention too is the few colleges communicated to me, and I'll pass along, we're asking about possibly having a stop at 99 in Durham for students, and then they would run a shuttle back and forth. It's just one of the ideas, and I'll forward it to you. I just received it actually this morning, so. And that's all.
Thank you. Any other board comments?
I have one. Since we don't have air quality today, I know you all have free time on your hands, and starting at 10 o'clock at the Silver Dollar Fairgrounds, our ADRC is having, fair until 2 p.m. It's the Aging and Disability Fair, and so we'd ask you to do that.
I'm not confessing to it.
So join us over at the Silver Dollar Fairgrounds.
Any other board comments?
I know you'll be there. I do.
Take public comment, you can't take action on it, you can talk about anything you want. Anybody from public like to speak?
For the board's awareness, Caltrans is hosting a groundbreaking ceremony for the State Route 99 rehabilitation project on May 1st. If he's interested, I have a flyer. We're gonna rehab the road and put a nice separated, bike ped path on the east side of the highway all the way through town.
I'll bring my Harley.
Wrong night.
I have one more. We are planning on doing Free Fair Day on Earth Day, which is
Any other comments? Please. Oh, you guys are trying to make me. All right.
Yeah, you're gonna earn your pay today.
Right, we're adjourned. We'll be back here, April 24th.
Good job, everybody. You're on your way out.